Grinding gear games generally, and Jonathan Rogers, the game director of Path of Exile 2 specifically, is continuing to kill it and answer questions about PoE 2 on its own subreddit. People are asking tons of questions, and Jonathan daily is going in there and answering them. We're going to dive into all those answers right now in this video. Let's get to it. The first question we're looking at is, how much crafting will there be in PoE 2? Jonathan immediately pipes in with a huge response. There will certainly be crafting in PoE 2, and for the crafting bench specifically, we are not actually removing it, just changing how it works to deal with some of the problems it has, not announced yet. In fact, I have a specific goal that people do more crafting than they currently do. In PoE 1, non-bench crafting is not something normal players often do. The design changes we already mentioned to some of the currency items go a long way to addressing this. This is phenomenal news. PoE 2 not having the crafting bench was one of the negative aspects, and that was what they said during ExileCon. It appears that they've gone back on that, or at least weren't ready to announce what they were doing with the crafting bench. We know some of the crafting currencies like Orbs of Alteration are completely gone in PoE 2. Perhaps there will be new ways to roll stuff, more deterministic ways to roll stuff on the crafting bench, and it won't simply be adding a single affix to an item. The next question is also huge. Hideouts in PoE 2, generally, will they be there? Jonathan pipes in with an amazing answer again. We will have hideouts. I'm personally a fan of the system. All your hideout MTXs will carry over. I also don't like big sprawling towns. I hate getting lost and they never seem to serve much purpose to me. I think the hideout editor could certainly use some UI improvements though. Another W from Jonathan. He is so right. One of the worst aspects of Diablo 4, no need to crap on it right now, but I just want to bring this up, was how large the towns were and how all the vendors were in different spots. Your stash was in one spot, another vendor, the armor smith was in another spot, and the occultist was in another. It was just ridiculous and you had to constantly move throughout. Being able to design your own town with a hideout is a huge selling point in PoE, and I'm glad it will be in PoE 2. Another long thread here started by yours truly. So far, the warrior-centric skills focus on mesas and big combos. Will the focus of the Marauder and Duelist be similarly niche? Marauder equals axes and such, Duelist equals swords and the like. Jonathan doesn't actually respond to me directly, but he does answer responses from other people. This person says, I'm curious about this too. How tied are skills going to be to weapons in this game? I'm excited that with multiple 6 links, better weapon switching, and the new passive tree mechanics, we can use more options on a single character. I really like hybrid characters, so I'm curious if skills themselves are more restrictive with weapon type. Jonathan responds, and it is a beefy one. We're just going to dive right into it. There was an early discussion about what we can do to make weapons feel different. What actually makes an axe and a sword different? In PoE 1, it's actually very little. We initially tried to do it only with stats, but there isn't really all that much you can do to truly make weapons feel different with only stats. You can make 3, maybe 4 weapon types feel different like that, but more? It's hard. So what makes an axe and a sword different in real life? It's the kind of attacks you can do with them. We made the call to limit all attacks to specific weapon types in PoE 2, so that's weapon skills, essentially. It's actually not as much of a limitation as you might expect because we have the automatic weapon swapping, so you can easily use multiple weapon types if you want to mix attacks from different weapon types. I think that it's been a huge advantage for design as well. Our animation team previously struggled to make attack animations actually cool with the old system. In order to make the character really use a weapon in the best way possible for that weapon, there was a lot of details around weight and timing that you need to take into account. Having to make that same animation work for multiple weapon types just waters it down, and you effectively get the lowest common denominator. If you make different animations for each weapon type, then all the timing and stuff changes, and the balance needs to change as well. At that point, you just might as well make another skill. So that's what we did. Take something like Cyclone. Traditional Cyclone is an axe-specific skill in PoE 2, but with a quarterstaff we have Whirling Assault, which is still spinning around with your weapon, but it works differently, and the animations are totally suited to the rest of the quarterstaff skill set. That isn't to say that every weapon type has a Cyclone equivalent, but it's design space that we can consider individually for each weapon type. For 2-hand versus 1-hand versions of weapons, it's more stat-driven. 2-hand gives you more but slower damage. 1-handed shield is of course more defense for less damage, and dual wielding gives you more damage but is still fast hitting. Generally, almost all attacks will work for one-hand or two-hand versions if the weapon type has one hand versus two-hand, of course. My goodness gracious. This is just lovely to hear the thought process behind how they actually went about doing this. And really, I'm so excited to try this out. It is very true that this opens up a lot of design space for them, tying specific skill gems to each weapon type. This will allow them to expand skills for years to come in PoE 2 and not have it feel clogged or watered down at all, kind of like what we've seen in PoE 1. There's another little answer in here. I respond to this person and say, good way to phrase it. I'm wondering if each class's position in the tree is going to be huge in this, or if ascendancies will focus on specific weapon classes. Someone responds and says, I think I heard someone say that there's only going to be a single passive cluster for each weapon type. They're going to put in more generic melee damage clusters. Jonathan responds and says, that is our current design of thinking, but we still haven't been able to do enough progression testing to really validate that this is correct. There's also another little bit of confirmation here from Jonathan that the new PoE 1 ascendancies are a thing that they thought would be cool to try out for League in PoE 1, but wouldn't want to immediately do in PoE 2. So that means no Wildwood ascendancies in PoE 2, at least to start. Also, another response here about ascendancies not tying to weapon types. Jonathan says, it is absolutely the case that ascendancies do not mention weapon types. When we design them, we always try to make it so that the obvious way to use the ascendancy class is to use it the way that is depicted in the art. But we never try to actually limit you, and we want people to think of how they can use them in non-obvious ways too. Great, the usual Path of Exile ingenuity will still be in PoE 2 when it comes to ascendancy classes. A short answer here from Jonathan. Somebody asks about Steam Deck, controller, and console plans. Jonathan says there will be controller support in PoE 2. Steam Deck should be fine, but we will have to look into what the performance is like. I haven't tested the game on one myself. Somebody asked about div cards in PoE 2. I hope divination cards exist in PoE 2. Jonathan responds, unfortunately, divination cards are a bit of a hard one. In theory, I like target farming. I think in SSF that works really well. However, in non-SSF, you are in an economy that makes it so that you tend to just play in whatever area has the highest payoff, see Crimson Temple. This means that many players just grind the same map over and over again forever because it's the highest expected value, even if they don't enjoy doing so particularly. For the sake of variety, I think that we would need to change how they work to some extent, but I don't have a specific plan right now. So that essentially is saying that div cards in their current iteration probably won't be in PoE 2, but he does respond to someone concerned about that and says, I'm not saying I'm going to remove div cards. I think the ability to save up is cool, but we need to find a solution to the fact that the correct highest expected value way to play is just to grind the same map over and over again for eternity. I think a solution to this could be instead tying div cards to specific monster types instead of specific areas, and maybe that could encourage you to roll those monster types on different areas. That would be kind of cool. Somebody else asked how many beloved PoE 1 skills will be in PoE 2. Jonathan responds, we will certainly be making PoE 2 versions of any skills that people enjoy in PoE 1. And they actually just talked about Righteous Fire, it sounds like, which is super cool. So that will be in PoE 2, albeit perhaps in a different form. Somebody else asked, are crossbows balanced only around WASD movement? Jonathan responded and said, I wouldn't say WASD is required to use crossbows, but it certainly makes it feel better to me, which is why we implemented it. I played crossbows for quite a while before we had WASD working, and it worked just fine. Cool, great stuff. Makes sense. Somebody asked how the uncut gem menu works. Somebody else responded and said the uncut gem has a level on it. A level 7 gem can unlock any skill up to the 7th row. Jonathan simply says, correct. And somebody else responded and said, any class or class specific. Level 7 uncut gem on Witch can unlock level 7 gem on Marauder. Jonathan confirms that is the case. The uncut gems are not class specific. When you open the screen on a Witch, the UI will pop open with the Witch gems in the center of the screen, but you scroll around and pick a gem with any attribute alignment you want. Fantastic, that still means that great customization is going to be in PoE 2, and they're going to encourage that. Good news. Very interesting answer from Jonathan here on accuracy. Will accuracy and evasion adapt to the new action combat approach in PoE 2? Jonathan simply says, one change we already made in PoE 2 to accuracy is that distance from action to target matters. The farther the distance, the more accuracy needed. So a melee character doesn't really need to worry about accuracy unless they are using particularly long-ranged melee attacks. See Cleave in PoE 1 right now. Accuracy is much more important if you are playing a ranged character. Wow, this is a great buff to melee. They should definitely mention this somewhere because that's super cool to hear. That's a stat that you don't need to worry about if you're getting up close and personal. Good stuff. Somebody asked about gender selection and character customization in PoE 2. Jonathan responded quite lengthily and said, I personally don't want to implement the full-on character editor that a lot of games have. We don't currently have anything like that, and it's something that would take a huge amount of work. It's also something that I don't think would have a huge payoff for us. You tend to immediately cover your character up with armor after all. I think the reason that a lot of games even get away with the dev cost of it is because they use the same tech for creating NPCs in their game world as well. If you need to create hundreds of human characters and you want your game designers to be able to do that, then in-engine character editor can make that happen. But this kind of thing goes against our philosophy in some ways. When designing a town, we prefer to have 4 characters that say 40 things rather than 40 characters that say 4 things. I like a small town with a few characters where we have room to explore the characters individually more, rather than having a giant sprawling town with a bunch of forgettable NPCs. That said, we will probably eventually have MTXs that swap the entire character out for a different one, which we would then have voice acting for. If we did that, we would likely start to alternate gender versions of all our character classes, since that is something that I think quite a lot of players would like to have. What a win take. That makes complete sense, and I love the thought process behind it. It's something that we see in PoE 1 right now. They design areas to have very few characters, but all the characters have sprawling dialogue options that you can listen to, or just very niche things that they accomplish. That's great, and I would greatly prefer that for them to iterate on various characters, a few of them, than to just create many different NPCs that we constantly have to interact and talk to, spread throughout various towns. Good stuff. Amazing take, Jonathan. Awesome question and answer here. Somebody asked if there will be a showcase of classic classes before PoE 2. Jonathan says, we will do a showcase of all the classes before beta. We will probably make some videos about the Ascendancy classes before beta as well, so that people can have a think about which builds they would like to play. Yes, 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 that means within 6 months we're going to see all the classes and some of the Ascendancies for PoE 2. That is super exciting. Bit of a meme answer here from Jonathan. Is there any particular reason for no guns? Jonathan simply responds with this picture right here. No shade at all, right? Zero shade thrown at Diablo 4, Call of Duty, anything. Right. Good one, Jonathan. Good one. Okay, a bit of a sad answer here. Unfortunately, somebody asked about guilds in PoE 2 and lots of new guild features. Now, Jonathan responds, I can't say it's top of the list in terms of priorities for us, unfortunately. I do think this is addressing the new features this person is asking for. I don't have anything against these kinds of features, but unfortunately they are just not a huge draw for most players, so it's more like the kind of thing that would be upgraded post-release rather than pre. So I hope that means that guilds are still going to be in PoE 2 because it is a good functionality, I like having them, but all these extra features this person's asking for probably not going to make the cut right now. Interesting question from this person and an answer from Jonathan that I'm kind of shocked by. Are PoE 2 also going to release supporter packs per league? Jonathan says it's a tricky question and we haven't answered it ourselves yet. We already have enough trouble keeping up with the microtransaction schedule we have now, let alone doubling it. The most likely outcome right now is that we have supporter packs that come out alongside the PoE 2 leagues, and they just stay current for the PoE 1 leagues as well. But we will have to see what we can do. That's curious. I would think that they want to double up and get tons of money, but they are being honestly intelligent. They're thinking about this. They're saying we don't have the manpower. We're going to focus on quality over quantity, even though it would definitely make them a ton more money. Good answer. W take. All right, a beefy question and answer here from Jonathan. Why stick with 6 links? Why not 5 or 7+ links? Just curious what is design reason behind this. Jonathan responds with, initially it was just that PoE players know what a 6 link is. So if you say every skill can be a 6 link, that is a really simple way to communicate the concept of what is changing. But I don't think it's wrong either. You want skills to have 2 support sockets as a baseline because having one at the start feels lame. If you get 2 supports early, you want to be able to choose between supporting 2 skills with 1 or 1 skill with 2. Then you need a pretty early game way to upgrade to 3 supports so that you can start to choose which skills you want to focus on more before eventually becoming easy to upgrade all your gems to that. Then you want to introduce a late game advancement to 4 supports just as 3 is becoming easy. Then you want a more grindy end game objective to upgrade all your gems to 5 supports. I think more than that would probably feel like a chore and water down the mods. There is more of an argument for less to lower mod dilution, but I think it would feel like you don't get enough upgrades then. The logic makes complete sense from Jonathan's end. I see nothing wrong with it. Good stuff. And finally, the last question currently on there is, brand and totems still included in PoE 2? Jonathan swoops in and says, totems for sure. It's PoE DNA for sure. Being able to make an army of them to fight for you? Of course. It's a playstyle that some people love. Spirit will allow this to be balanced. Brands? Maybe. Still under discussion. So, perhaps rip to brands, but totems are confirmed. Good stuff. There we have it, a ton of awesome new information about PoE 2, and I'm sure there will be even more stuff coming in the next few days. They really seem to be ramping up on all these Q&A sessions. I do expect more videos to start releasing in the new year as well, with direct gameplay footage of PoE. The new classes, the old classes, Ascendancy classes, Endgame is coming up too. It's going to be super cool, and all of it is going to be here on the channel. If you want to follow all that news and see everything PoE related, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Anyways, that's all for this video. Tala Moana, Exile.